As a creative, I've dipped into multiple different things from filmmaking, so traditional storytelling with scripts, scripted content, narrative content. When I was 21, I shot my first ever feature film, recognized by a company in Hollywood who invested in it. After that, I kind of was like burned by making movies and didn't want to do them ever again. So I started a YouTube channel that's reached up to almost 100,000 subscribers. After that, I just started writing a rule book literally for myself. And what started as a couple paragraphs on a Apple Notes just grew into a full manuscript. I really love having my YouTube channel as an outlet to share these types of experiences. Doing a YouTube channel is really tough. It is a constant battle. It's like a 50-50 split. 50% is your passion, your love, your intention to why you started this. And then the other 50%, basically like a business, is the analytics, satisfying the algorithm, trying to be popular, giving it sustainability. Because a YouTube channel, like a movie, like anything, has to be treated like a business. For me, I've kind of dabbled in all aspects of filmmaking. I'm one of those types of creators who like to do a little bit of everything, and I've heard the term that this is also known as pushing the bus up the hill. I don't know if you've heard this term, but it's the concept that you do so many things at once that instead of pushing like one thing at once, like a small object up a hill, you're pushing like an entire bus. You're doing 20 things at once. But no matter how hard I try, I can't just have one tab open on my internet browser. I have to have exactly. And so
more is better, right?
Exactly. And I think it's the way my brain is calibrated. And I think certain people can work really well with one thing. From high school, working on multiple different textbooks at once, I've always just worked better with my hands stretched out while it is overwhelming. So as a creative, I've dipped into multiple different things from filmmaking, so traditional storytelling with scripts, scripted content, narrative content. When I was 21, I shot my first ever feature film that ended up getting global distribution and recognized by a company in Hollywood who invested in it. And then after that, I kind of was like burned by making movies and didn't want to do them ever again. So I started a YouTube channel that's reached up to almost 100,000 subscribers. And then I had a stark realization in the process of that, thinking, is everything that I ever have made, and this might put a weird taste in your mouth along with most other people might be listening to it, because it did definitely for me, which was everything that I've ever created can only be digested if there's power. If by chance, and not to go doomsday or like conspiracy theory, it was just a weird thought in my head. I'm like, if the power went out, I would have zero things to show to my children. Be like, what does your dad do? Well, he made things on the internet that we can't access anymore. And so that harsh reality began my journey writing a book for about 4 years. And it sort of wove in my experience being an everything filmmaker, 5-in-1 filmmaker, from doing scripted content, documentary content, YouTube, and trying to find my authentic voice in that journey. Because I think, as most of us, whether we're making a short film, a YouTube channel, or even a podcast, there is an element of our voice that we want to share within that. But I think in the world that we live in, the climate is very influenced. There's a lot of people to look at. You know, anywhere we turn, there's some sort of very influential figure in our trajectory, and we like to follow within their footsteps because it's really easy. So when I was building up my YouTube channel, I found much more comfort copying other creatives than I did using my own unique voice, which there definitely is one. We all have our own unique voice, but it's terrifying to speak our own language. It's terrifying to wear the clothes we like to wear. It's much easier to be like, well, the fashion of Kanye West, maybe is a bad example, but the fashion of Kanye West is he's already wearing it. If people already like his brand, I'm just going to wear the clothes that he wears because that's so much easier. And I felt that sort of mentality when it came to expressing myself on the internet. And what happened, which is probably predictable, is I got called out for it. A lot of people recognized that I was like directly riffing off a very famous filmmaker here in Ontario, Canada, Peter McKinnon. And people totally saw that I was copying him. And
while dressed as Kanye West, no less.
But I felt that there was I was getting a lot of these comments. They were hate comments. It was a lot of
Mm.
mean feedback that I was
Wow.
getting. And so I thought there must be something true here because it definitely hurt the fact that I thought I was being authentic. Meanwhile, people were watching me, seeing that I was directly riffing off of his style. Everything from the types of shots I was getting, my personality that I was on camera. And at the end of the day, being unauthentic is not sustainable for your brand. You know, if you follow in someone's footsteps long enough, sooner or later you're going to trip and fall over. And I was tripping. I was constantly tripping. And so I decided to create a little bit of a rule book for myself. Okay, how do I be authentic? It was like 5 steps. I decided to make that into a video. The video actually ended up doing really well for my channel, one of the most successful videos on my channel. And that just sort of and then it got me in context with the person who I was copying, Peter, and I started recognizing that a lot of people found value in this, and more importantly, I did. And from that point forward, not only did my YouTube channel start gaining its own authentic voice, but so did the films I was making, the relationships I was building, and my life just sort of felt more authentic after that. So I'm like, okay, maybe there's some material here. So after that, I just started writing a rule book literally for myself, maybe an odd YouTube video here or there. And what started as a couple paragraphs on an Apple Notes just grew into a full manuscript. 2 years later, I was working on a book, and now it is a published piece of content called The Unoriginal Guide to Originality, which is a full guidebook to creativity and authenticity in this very over-influenced climate, and how to find your voice as a creative or just as an individual. So that was how I started writing that, and that's where we're at now.
That's great. What opportunities has that book led to?
It's interesting because less than opportunities, it's really given myself the backbone to which I kind of was seeking, which was a not disassociation from who I am as a filmmaker, but really just carving out another side of myself that I felt like wasn't being expressed. And also, there is now another layer to the legacy, which is something that is tangible, which is really cool. Because as filmmakers, and this is no disrespect to anybody who tells stories, because like 95% of the time I'm a filmmaker, 5% was just the book. And 95% of the time, there's nothing tangible. Like we don't even have DVDs anymore.
Yeah.
Like the goal for me when I was growing up was I want to have a movie that I can print out and rip the plastic off on the inside and have like a DVD with the sleeve. And then, by the time it became to be a filmmaker in 2022, there's no opportunity to have any tangible aspect of your thing. If anything, you're at the peak of your success if it's untangible. If it's on Netflix or if people are seeing it in a movie theater, then you've reached the peak. But what I recognize is the only thing that you have to that film is like a movie poster. And so when I get to see the book, I think that is something really, valuable. And as far as the opportunities go, it's really just a business card for me now, where it's something I can say to my name. A lot of friends recognize it, and it's provided speaking opportunities. And most importantly, it's just allowed me to learn a little bit about myself. Like I recommend anybody write a book. And it's totally like a journal. Like I'll just go and read it. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. I needed that piece of information today.
So I would love to hear the story of Dead Rush. How did you write, direct, produce, post-produce an entire feature film and get it nationally distributed when you were 21?
Yeah, so I had originally shot a short film when I was 19 called Dead Rush, and it was a first-person zombie apocalypse movie told from the main character's POV. And I just wanted to make it with some friends over a weekend, so for about $250, I got together around 50 people. 43 of them were zombie extras. The other bits were cast. And with the biggest amount of money going towards some prosthetics for the zombies. And I think about $100 went towards pizza. We shot this little short film that ended up gaining the recognition of a company out in LA who wanted to finance a feature-length film. And I was off to the races at the age of 20, writing a feature-length script, casting, building this whole thing out, a complete imposter in an industry I knew nothing about. On top of that, we were shooting something that had never been done before in North America, which was a first-person feature-length movie. And simultaneously, there was another movie being made called Hardcore Henry, and that was done in Europe, where they were able to do the most ridiculous shit during the filming of that. We had a bunch of limitations, not only to legalities filming in Canada, which is a pain in the ass, but also the fact that we didn't have $1 million budget. We had $25,000 to make a feature-length movie in 2 weeks. So there was a lot of limitations to the process. Mostly the angle to which we filmed from, and any mentors that I had at the time or any other filmmakers who I looked up to, I was like, hey, can you give me some help with this one? Any ideas? And they would just look at me like, good luck, kid. And that was the hardest thing I think I've ever done to this date, but also one of the biggest learning lessons. And I do tell a good deal about that project in the book, actually.
Who are those filmmakers that you turn to for guidance?
There's a lot of local filmmakers here in Ontario who I looked up to, and I still do, and we're all very good friends. They have they have a production company here in Toronto, and they do a lot of horror films and indie horror films, as well as some other film directors. That I'm honored to call my friends, and more importantly, just be able to have as mentors.
And so you're there, 2 weeks of shooting. What were the biggest production nightmares that you had to solve there on set?
That's a great question. Thank you for bringing back the traumas. I blanked them out of my brain. But the biggest one, I would say this has like been etched into my brain, is we were filming, this really generous person let us rent out for like $500 this whole warehouse for a week. And this warehouse was a functioning factory. And,
what kind of factory?
beats me. I was like, cool, a factory.
Something was being made.
Something was being made. And they're like, hey, you can have this small section of the factory that we kind of rent out to some small businesses who aren't there anymore. So I was like, great. So we go in, we shot there for about a week. And me being ambitious at the time and kind of willing to do whatever to get the shot, we started exploring outside of the areas to which we were allowed to film in. We found this one really good spot. We shot in it. Accidentally broke a piece of machinery because one of the grip guys stood on this conveyor belt that wasn't meant to be stood on.
Oh, no.
And the next day that I had 100 extras coming up to and about 50 cast crews, about 150 people in total on set this one day for our biggest scene in the movie. I get a phone call that morning from the owner of the factory saying, hey, I won't use any profanities, but he's like, you guys.
Oh, he was not happy.
He was not happy. Not happy.
And he wanted you out?
Completely. So,
oh, no.
Yeah, and I had the biggest scene to shoot of my entire movie that day. And so he calls me, says, hey, you guys have to get out of here. I was like, you don't understand. I have to shoot my zombie movie. He's like, you don't understand. You destroyed my equipment. And we ended up, I remember hanging up, calling my mom almost in tears. And we still had another week of filming to go. And at this point, I was like, I'm never touching a camera again. I'm not even going to watch a movie. The best memory I have of this moment, I was walking up the street in my underwear because we were just like finished a day of shooting. And I was like down, I was barefoot, underwear, and just walking off into the sunset. And I was ready to just keep walking.
So, carrying your pants, or were those just gone? Those were lost in production.
Who knows where the pants went. But the pants were gone, and I remember my first AD and my producing partner were walking beside me and like, hey, like we got to turn around, we got to make this movie, Zach. And I was ready to just go live out in the woods, being just like a man of the woods at that point. And
I don't blame you.
Yeah, and my mom, incredible human being that she is, she got on the phone with this factory owner, sweet talked him somehow, and the next day we were in there. And we got the location, brought in the zombies, wrapped out, longest shooting day of my life, and we were able to get everything that we needed.
That's amazing. How long was that final shoot day?
It was like 24 hours.
Oh my God.
It was a long day. Like, I mean, like legitimately, it was like 20 hours. We started early in the morning and then shot in the late hours of the night. And then we had to like get everything out because they wanted us out of there.
Amazing. So you got it. So you finished the film. You cut it yourself?
Yeah, I edited myself. So, and to kind of root back to how we kind of started about this, because Nick, you were sharing your sort of trajectory after school, there's sort of that, oh, what do I do? Where am I going? And, and this was something that I was facing as well. I was getting some jobs here or there, but I needed something to really put my name on the map. And so this opportunity to do this film, while overwhelming and daunting, I knew it was kind of going to be the accelerator. And I didn't go to university or college for filmmaking, so I was even more lost. I was like, I really love this a lot, and I didn't invest in an education, but I have someone willing to invest in this education, in quotations, for me to make, and I really have to knock it out of the park. And so I took on everything imaginable, because to young filmmakers listening to this, $25,000 seems like a lot of money. I thought it was like $1 million. To most experienced people, that's like craft services for a day. So it was no money that I thought was like Top Gun Maverick level money. And it was all spent very quickly. And I took on every single hat imaginable, from directing, editing, writing, applying makeup.
Wow.
I did have incredibly talented human beings on my team, but slowly but surely they moved on to other projects, and I stayed on to editing this masterpiece. And it was wrapped up in about a year, and we had our big world premiere. And the rest is history.
What is that history? What happened then?
I had this huge dream that this movie was going to make me the next Spielberg. I was like, here we go. I am this young guy. I made this film that no one's seen before. It's a zombie film. It's first person. It's got all these cool like things about it. And sure enough, as soon as we did our press release and we're sending it out to people to get reviewed, it just got obliterated by reviewers in the worst way possible. And I remember that same feeling of walking up the street in my underwear just came back again. And
pants came off again.
Pants came off again. I don't know what happens. I'm not even wearing the pants right now. From that point forward, I was pantsless. So
that's what happens.
It's what happens, you know.
That's the risk you take.
That's the risk for filmmaking, the love of the passion, and
your legs get tan.
It's true. It's very freeing, actually. It happened. But we ended up, it ended up getting ripped to shreds, and it definitely, that my ego took a big hit. And so I was really afraid at that point that we weren't going to, that was it for my career again. But we ended up actually doing the premiere. It did end up getting global distribution. We did win Audience Choice Award at the festival that we played at. It actually was well received. But as a young, youthful filmmaker, I signed like the shittiest deal in history, where I had no control of the film once it was done. I didn't really make any money off of it. And to this day, I haven't made a dime off the movie. I have no idea where it is. Daily, I get messages on YouTube, because I have a version of it uploaded to my YouTube, just because I was sending it out as like a link for people to watch online. And because of that, YouTube has a copyright claim thing where they'll let you know if someone's copywritten your movie. And so daily, probably like weekly, I get a notification on YouTube of some other production company that's released the movie. And it like collectively, it's probably got about 5 million views on YouTube. It's released in like Germany, Japan, all around the world. And there's all these different titles for it. And I've not seen a dime from it. I haven't seen any real benefit from it. But the greatest benefit, which I'm sure you could agree to, is that the experience for most things is usually the most valuable asset, beyond connections and all that stuff. Because like connections can get you so far, but it's like without the experience, you really aren't gaining anything. You can have a great connection but have bad experience and not go anywhere. But you can have great experience and have a few good connections and go everywhere.
What is that next major project? So you're doing frequent, really high quality shorts on your channel. You're doing very thorough behind the scenes, using those projects to teach people filmmaking. What's the next feature film project for you?
Great question, man. So we ended up diving into a new short film that is going to be premiering actually this month, August 26th, which is a science fiction film. After doing a first-person zombie movie, I recognized that I wanted to dive a little bit more into different genre pieces, specifically science fiction, and found a true passion for it. So to this day, I've made four sci-fi films that I'm really happy with. And this is just another one. We just finished a sort of Black Mirror esque short film that follows a young girl who's trapped inside of a smart home. And the short film is it turned out excellent. And the goal is to use that as a proof of concept to then finance and get some attention for a feature film of that.
Awesome. That's cool. And what will you do differently now that you've been to the rodeo?
Tighter belt. Keep the pants on tighter. And I mean, I think the big thing that I would gain from this, or something that I would do different on a new feature film rather than the first one, almost everything. I think one is just not to take it so seriously. So when we did this short film, shorts are different than features, obviously, but they do take the same amount of attention to detail. It's just less time, but you're still going through stressful situations, collaboration, working with groups of people. And I would say the thing is, like, it's not brain surgery. You're not curing cancer. You're not doing anything that will help maybe influence people, but this isn't going to save a life per se. And it's really important to put that lens over what we do, because if we don't, then it becomes this horribly stressful craft that was, I think, 100% of us got into it because it's an art that we really love. And I know it sounds kind of hippy dippy, but the quickest way to dislike this medium is to take it super seriously. And I know we have bills to feed, mouths to feed, bills to pay, mouths to feed. At the end of the day, obviously we have to do that, and smiles and good intentions can't put money in the bank account, but also stress doesn't make anything better. And that was one ingredient I had wrong when I made this other film. I stressed so much that I even look back on the project now with like iron butterflies in my stomach, which isn't fun. So the next project, and we did it on this one, which was, it sort of felt like making a movie in high school. It was like group of friends got together. We laughed every day. We wrapped up our days at good times. We didn't kill ourselves. And the result was something really beautiful.
Oh, that's great. And how much of that process will you explore on your YouTube channel of producing that?
I mean, I hope all of it. I really love having my YouTube channel as an outlet to share these types of experiences, as I'm sure with you, Nick, like with the podcast, it's like having an outlet to share these things. I think the greatest backbone for me when I got out of high school and was kind of a lost filmmaker was the internet. I'm sure you were a viewer as much as I was of the guys from like Film Riot or the people on Indie Mogul. And to me, it was like this family that I had that knew exactly what I was going through. And because of that, I was able to get through these things a lot easier. And I don't know what the experience is like post-film school, but I can only imagine it's the same sort of like, oh, now I'm out here in the wild trying to figure out how to survive. And with having the outlets to which I had to sort of learn and just more or less lean on as just advice and as a community, I would like to supply the same sort of support for young filmmakers who have that same feeling of survival in the wilderness.
Yeah, and you're doing that now with your channel. Where will you go from here with the channel? What's ahead?
To anyone who has a YouTube channel out there or building a brand, it is a constant battle between, it's like a 50-50 split. 50% is your passion, your love, your intention to why you started this. And then the other 50%, basically like a business, is the analytics, satisfying the algorithm, trying to be popular, giving it sustainability. Because a YouTube channel, like a movie, like anything, has to be treated like a business. And a business can't just float on the good intentions of making people happy. It would be amazing if you could do that, but with you doing a YouTube channel, it's really tough. And so it's riding the line of riding the wave of the algorithm and trying to figure out how to swim up on that, and also make content that feels good in my heart and soul. And so it'll be playing out those two things and hopefully finding a good voice in that. I've sort of gone in and out of what I like about the YouTube channel, and making YouTube content is as much of a grind as it is a joy, and the two are equal pains and passion points. But I feel like we're finding something good. It will be exploring the making of a new film, random thoughts in my head, and the loves and joys of being a creative.
People starting their professional editing careers right now, what can they do to accelerate their careers? What software should they be learning? What tutorials should they be watching? What would you do if you were just starting right now?
Nick, I love that you're asking this because I've been a huge Premiere Pro user. So I started off as Final Cut, migrated to Premiere Pro, and then I watched this great video by fellow filmmaker Sam Kolder, and he talks about switching over to DaVinci Resolve. I watched it and I was like, oh my God, this looks like a dream. And as much as I'm a huge Premiere user, I've used Premiere for like 8 years now. It's been what I've cut 2 features on, every video imaginable on. And I'm a huge advocate for it. But then I was like, it was just sort of seeing the green grass on the other side and realizing that no, it is actually greener. Mine is like this sunburnt, dry grass that I keep putting money on, being like, no, it's getting better. No, they're going to come out with an update that stops it crashing every 10 minutes. So all of that said, if I was starting over, I would start on DaVinci Resolve. I think the best skill is just time. So it would be dialing in on something like DaVinci Resolve. They say 10,000 hours. I would give you 50,000 hours. And a lot of people wonder, is it the software? Software can only do so much. I can probably edit a good video on an app on my phone. And that's just because I understand how it works. But I think the key things to know as an editor are your software in and out. So the best thing is your hotkeys. How do I use my keyboard? Because knowing hotkeys is truly the quickest way to sort of learn the language of editing. If not, you're kind of like clicking 1, 2, and 3. It's the same way as like watching your dad send a text message and you writing an email, and your dad's like his face is to the phone, clicking one button at a time. Learning your software in and out is it's flow state. So learning how to tap into the flow state using DaVinci Resolve. And I actually think, as much as I'm not a big gear person, having a good computer goes a long way. I just recently bought the new Mac M1 Max, which I know is not the nicest on the bank account. But if anyone is sort of sitting on money where they're like, oh, I should buy an expensive camera, or maybe I'll go out to the bar tonight, I would put that on pause and go forward with either getting a super juiced up PC or a really good Mac, because the most important thing as an editor is tapping into a flow state, which really means operating with no pauses in your creative process. And the fastest pauses are when you have to render, when your computer lags, when Premiere crashes unexpectedly, sorry, a big error has happened, and all of those things. So those would be my sort of top recommendations for any editors beginning right now.
How is the role of the indie filmmaker changing? So you're at the forefront of that. You have produced a feature film much younger than most people even dream of it, and you're producing these cinematic shorts and this super high quality instructional content. What is the opportunity for people that want to be the next Steven Spielberg? How do they get there, and what will that look like in the coming decade?
First off, Nick, I really appreciate that. That means a lot. But I think for those who want to become the next Steven Spielberg, one, to recognize that we live in a time that Steven Spielberg never got to experience at the same age. Spielberg had to get together a group of buddies, which, remarkably were some of the most incredible filmmakers in the world. You had George Lucas, Scorsese, Coppola, Spielberg. They all hung out together. They collaborated. And I think and they made the best movies ever. They would get together, they'd hang out, party, make good films, review each other's stuff. And we live in an era to which that is so accessible. And I think we need to, rinse and repeat that method where we have that so much better. Like, they just stumbled across each other and made that connection. And a lot of people go to film school to learn and educate. But the biggest thing that I've gained from hearing other people's film school experience, and be interested to hear yours, is the community that you met, the fun creatives that you got to collaborate with. But collaboration right now is at an all-time high. My girlfriend is obsessed with TikTok. I know nothing about it, but we'll listen to a song on the radio and she's like, that came from a TikTok video. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, songs you're listening to that are mixed and mastered and like on the radio started off of some guy going bup, 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 beep, bup, 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 on his
Funny.
video, and then someone else collaborates with that and sings to it. And we have that availability right now with Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And so what I would say is, one, leverage the tools that are available to build out your network. There's a great saying, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So it's for you to be able to think, what do I want to do? Do I want to go fast or far? And really determine one or the other, because you can be a filmmaker doing one or either. I'm fortunate that I get to do both simultaneously. I have a YouTube channel that I do mostly by myself, and then I do my film stuff that there's no way I would do by my own. And seeing the trajectory of both of those things, if you want to follow the Zach Ramelan path, I would say plant many seeds and see which tree grows. Like we started this conversation with, I am a push the bus up kind of filmmaker. I do a lot of things all at once and maybe move things slowly, but I get the satisfaction of seeing lots of trees growing. It's like, for me, it's a forest growing simultaneously as opposed to a full tree growing at their own time. Now, if you just want that one tree, if you wanted to see a tree grow fast, then just do that solo. If you want to see a whole forest grow, but maybe take longer, expect be patient, but expect the greater fruits of your labor. So, to become the next Spielberg, I don't know if that's possible anymore to become a Spielberg. But I think the really exciting thing is we haven't seen what our generation Spielberg is going to be yet. And there is a very beautiful hybrid of what's possible. And so instead of us really, and this is my philosophy, instead of us really trying to bite on, oh, I got to make a feature, I got to make what I grew up on. Like, we're implementing nostalgia and past standards as what the pinnacle of success is for this generation. But the reality is this generation is very different than what the generations were before. And I bet you if Spielberg was born today, he would probably be leveraging what technology exists now rather than referring to what was in the past. Spielberg wasn't making movies, black and white talkies that maybe his parents grew up on. He made movies that were relevant to their generation and actually were ahead of time, to which is why he is still, like, you watch Jaws and you're like, wow, this movie is relevant now. And I think if you want to be relevant in 2030, 2040, you need to lean into where things are at now. And those top things, as much as I'd hate to say it, are things like YouTube, Instagram, and also the cinema, movie theaters. And it's blending those things together to create a sort of hybrid. So I think I'm going to continue becoming a hybrid filmmaker while leaning into the things that I love, while still pursuing to try and make a feature film or to get a show up on Netflix, but to not try to live in the shadow of the greats that were from the past, but rather try to see what shadow I could cast in the future.
So as you build toward that future, how do you support yourself? And what portion of your revenue comes from client projects?
It's so funny. Like, when the typical question when someone asks you, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what are you working on? I draw a blank immediately. I'm like, I have no idea how I pay bills. I'm like,
growing a whole forest over here.
yeah, exactly. It costs money to grow a forest. I don't know where the money's coming from, but it's coming there.
While I'm pushing a bus up a hill.
Without pants on.
Yeah, without naked.
You've got the great illustration.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on.
Maybe that's the next book title. Pushing a bus up a growing
I'll read that.
Yeah, exactly. Pantsless. As far as like financial stuff, I do jobs that pay the bills. So event videography, documentary work. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to do some pretty cool short documentary projects that pay the bills long enough. I'm really trying to tap into doing less projects, but make them higher quality rather than more
Mm,
projects that are
I
mediocre,
like that.
if that makes sense. So
Yep.
like doing a ton of like mini corporate client jobs where it's like $100 here, $1,000 here, $300 there. It's to just do like a big project. And those are harder to find, but the money in the bank account lasts a little bit longer, so you have a little bit more wiggle room to do that. But you know,
As does the impact of the work. That's something that is going to have more meaning on your portfolio and attract more of that type of project. I
I
totally agree.
exactly, and I recognize that the projects I look on back on that I like did for like $100 or $200, like I never want to look at them again.
It'll never see the light of day.
Yeah, the project I was given a little bit more time to work on, I end up being very happy to share with people and
Yeah.
show, which then in
Yeah.
exchange will inevitably get me more business. But if I'm ashamed, not even ashamed, but if I just like, let's just like sneak that one under the rug, we won't talk about that. It's not gonna make me grow. And in fact, so it just made a small amount of money, and that's all it'll ever be.
Right.
But if I make something that I was able to put more time into, make a little bit more money off of, but maybe less work will come from it instantaneously, the long-term gain will be much more beneficial. So maybe in a year I won't get a ton of work from that project, but in 2 years I might get 3 extra jobs. Well, then it was worth the investment. So I try to put that mentality into the stuff that I work on. I'm also, no matter what it is, I am a ridiculously I'm crazy perfectionist when it comes to projects. I don't like if someone's like, "Hey, do you mind doing the thing for free?" I'll die on the sword for that. I will like, and I hate that I do that, but I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll just spend an hour on it, and then like 10 hours later, I'll have done someone's like promo video, and I'm like, oh, I did it again.
That's great though. That's where the quality comes from.
Yeah.
And so, have you experienced burnout? Have you gotten reached points where you feel like, man, I'm doing these client projects, I don't have creative fulfillment, I don't have the control over this that I desire, or have you found a way around that?
I wish I could say that I'm smart enough to navigate those types of things. But like currently I'm facing it. Like I like literally today is a day off for me. I get to talk to you
Mm.
and do a couple things on my short, but I have reached kind of a tipping point right now. Mostly because on top of being an obsessive editor, I'm also a people pleaser, and I'll try and like overdo things or take on projects, and that's truly where the work becomes overwhelming. And so I just had a crazy work week where I finished a bunch of projects and a ton of things on my plate and planning new things, and so just at the tipping point of burnout. So yes, it still happens. It's currently like at the brink of happening, but I'm slowing down, and I think it's just giving myself some breathers and breaks, because at the end of the day, like I said before, we're not curing cancer. Why should we be feeling the stress of that?
What mentorship have you found along the way? You mentioned friends in the filmmaking community there in Toronto earlier who have been helpful. How important is it to have sort of a guide who's been through it, showing you the way, and how have you found those people?
So, like I said earlier, like of course, fellow filmmakers in the filmmaking scene have been really helpful. Above having like legitimate friends in the space, because even as like a beginner filmmaker, if you don't have anybody to talk to or to communicate with, I had YouTube. I had people like Film Riot, who I'm fortunate enough to call friends now.
Filmright distributing your shorts, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was to me that was like that was the biggest accomplishment of my career, was to one like to receive an email from them, and then two to be able to like talk to them, and then three to have a movie on their platform was just like huge accomplishment.
Great.
And yeah,
Yeah.
the young 17-year-old filmmaker was just exploding at that moment. But I would say mentorship can be found on the internet, and you don't really need the real face-to-face peeps. And then other mentorship is just going on set. Like I did a lot of production assisting, mostly to learn. It's so funny when you're a director, you're either the director of a project or you're the production assistant on someone else's. There's nowhere in between. It's like either you're the bottom of the everything or you're the top dog. And you like
Yeah.
that's at least what I experienced. It's like I couldn't do anything else other than do all of it or nothing, and which was actually really fun because when you PA on someone's set, you kind of it's like really nice. You're like, I get to watch this person stress out and answer all these questions, and all I have to do is serve coffee.
And what a great way to learn, because you can literally be everywhere on set talking to anyone, and it's justified.
100%. So that's where I found a lot of my mentorship came from, was just watching and learning, whether it was on the internet or PAing on set. So if there's any young filmmakers out there, even if you're an editor, like getting on sets, meeting people can really be a tremendous help. I recently just finished shooting a documentary with an incredible filmmaker, Mark Bone, who's a documentarian, and we went across the states filming guys chase tornadoes. We were doing a tornado chasing
Oh,
documentary,
fun.
and it was
Wow.
really fun, man. One of my greatest fears I overcame. I literally grew up watching Twister over my sister's shoulder, and she would freak the hell out of me almost every day, being like, Zach, there's a funnel cloud. Look, there's a funnel cloud coming
That might
down.
be
Her
it.
being in
It's
tears.
coming for us.
It is. She would do that. And so I overcame that fear of twisters and tornadoes by actually chasing them. But the nice thing was I
Oh,
was
how
B
cool.
cam on this documentary. And there's something really freeing about being B cam over A cam, because I could really learn a lot about what the other filmmaker was doing. So as a recommendation to anyone who's listening to this, being a PA, being the B cam, C cam, assistant editor, or whatever that is, while it might be maybe a hit to the ego, or seem maybe not like the pinnacle, like maybe you're not Spielberg, maybe you're Spielberg's production assistant, there's something really valuable actually about being in that position, because you learn much more when you learn both. It's like when you get the head roll, all you want is to be down on the bottom and just be like, I just want to ride the wave. And there's something really nice about being at the bottom, just absorbing and being a sponge.
Something I've found, and advice I've given to a lot of people curious about how to get those jobs, that access to interesting filmmakers, just in a starting role, intern or PA, is just reaching out to people and saying, I'm a fan of your work. I would love to help you. I'd love to be involved. Sometimes it's, without pay. That almost always leads to paid gigs once you prove yourself. What other advice might you have for finding interesting filmmakers to attach yourself to, interesting projects to help as a PA or in some other entry level capacity?
I think you nailed it on the head. It's message. Sending a message to someone is so effective, even to the point of working with brands. When I started doing my YouTube channel, I wanted to work with some big brands. I literally Facebook messaged them. And at the time, Facebook Messenger publicly showed if you had a quick response rate or not. So companies had to respond to me in a quick rate, or else it would reflect on their customer service.
I love that.
And so
How
I
funny.
messaged blogs and articles and stuff to which I wanted to work with or collaborate with.
Yeah.
And in exchange, I was able to benefit really well. And even now, like camera companies and stuff. So the same goes for work. Like I'm working with a VFX team right now on my new short film that they just messaged me over Facebook. They're like, hey, we saw that you make sci-fi movies. Let us know if you ever want to work with each other. And I was like, actually, funny enough, I'm working on something right now. And they did about 60% of the visual effects in my new film, which, I would have been up shit creek without them. So they just messaged me randomly. And now we'll be long-term collaborators. So the same can go in the other direction.
That's great. Great advice. I love that. This was awesome, Zach. Any final words? Any final tips or guidance for people who would love to have a career like yours?
Oh man, I think it's to follow the pain of hearing the saying is because of how cliche it is, but following your dreams is truly one of the most important things. But to solidify what that dream is, because I sometimes we say dream and it's kind of this blurry image in our heads, and that's how we can kind of sway getting the golden handcuffs, which is something that most editors get, which is this can be a very lucrative business. You can make a lot of money being a corporate editor, doing random jobs, but those sway off of what that original dream was. And I recommend anyone writing down what it is that they really want to accomplish in this, and then work backwards to how they'll get to there. Because having concrete blueprints to where you want to go will give you the best results to what you want to achieve in this industry. And don't use Premiere Pro. Get DaVinci Resolve.
Awesome, Zach. Thank you. Everyone, follow Zach on YouTube if you don't already. You will love his shorts. You'll love his behind the scenes, his teaching content. Thank you for this, Zach.
Nick, thank you so much. It was an honor. You ask the best questions imaginable, and I wish I had your podcast growing up. This would have been so great to listen to.